Good morning, Garland Nixon here, and just a word of advice to the ruling elite in Europe. I know that you're fleecing the suckers, and you know it, but you can't let the suckers figure it out. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I don't know why. Everybody let me know. Is the sound okay? Is everybody got good? We got good sound? Give me a thumbs up if we got good sound. Everybody? Nothing yet? I'm sure somebody's going to say something. I think we got good sound. I hope we got good sound because I can't necessarily hear what's going on in my ear. I guess somebody just said yes. I think, okay, we got some thumbs up. Good. That means we got sound, even if I don't have any in my earphones. Okay, let's talk. You know, I think back to 2014 when Victoria Nuland, you know, the infamous, I'm getting comfortable here, yikes. Victoria Nuland, there's an infamous conversation that somebody recorded. Gee, I wonder who. Somebody happened to be eavesdropping on Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt, who was at that time the U.S. Room here. He was the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, and they were talking about, you know, they were about to overthrow the government in 2 weeks, and they were talking about who they were going to install as the puppets. And Jeffrey Pyatt, you know, Jeffrey Pyatt said something about a particular name, and he said, well, the EU ain't going to like that. And you probably remember this. Victoria Nuland said, F the EU. Here's what I'll say to the EU. That's what we call in the legal community, in the law enforcement community, and the investigative community, a clue. A clue that should have been taken by Europe then, but the ruling elite didn't take the clue because they thought that even though the poor working class suckers out there that were about to get hammered didn't understand what was going on, and they were going to get hammered, but they thought that Victoria Nuland in F the EU meant the working class, the regular people, not the quizzling puppets and the ruling elite in the EU. Well, she did. And now we're finding out the reality. You know, as I said in the beginning, look, any good con artist knows, you know, as P.T. Barnum said, it's against the laws of God and nature to allow a sucker to keep his money. Any good con artist knows, look, you can't let the suckers figure out that they're suckers. You're screwed when that happens. You got to make them believe that you're on their side, that you're working for them. And once their bank account is empty and the cops come to them and they say, got bad news, Mr. and Mrs. Sapp, Garland Nixon was a con artist and he's conned you out of all your money. You have to have them in a mindset where they say, oh no, officer, Garland's a good man. It was just a business deal that went bad. He tried his best. You have to have them so brainwashed that they actually support and protect and defend the person who has taken them to the cleaners. That's a good con artist. That's a con artist that knows what the hell they're doing. The neocons aren't con artists. They're knuckle dragging apes with my apologies to actual knuckle dragging apes. There's knuckle dragging apes. So when these knuckle draggers went to Europe, they're like, okay, we're going to get this and take that and do this and kill this and blow this up and steal this. We're going to pull the industry out of them. We're going to impoverish the people, and they're high-fiving. And nobody said, you know, you think at some point the European people, I don't know, you might have read something about the French Revolution. Do you think at some point the European people may be averse to having their standard of living reduced to absolute dire poverty with no right to protest, no right to talk, be fully censored, just done, finished, screwed, blued, tattooed? Do you think at some point they may push back? And the neocons are like, I don't understand the question. we can attack Ukraine and it's all going to work out. Why Russia will fall, Putin will fall to his knees, he'll get his head chopped off, the Russians will welcome us with flowers, and we'll come in and we'll divvy Russia up. Ooh, I got the wheat, what about you? I want the nickel, how about you? The gold for me. Yeah, well, give me the oil and gas. That's the way it's going to work. It's all going to be perfect. How could we possibly fail? How could our plans possibly go awry? If you're NEOCON, they couldn't. They couldn't ever go awry, because you know how things are going to work out, because you project reality into, it's kind of like a lot of the spiritually minded new age people, or old age people for that matter, will say, like, we can project into the universe what we want. We can believe and we can manifest, right? Well, the neocons are kind of new age in that way. They believe they can manifest evil, hegemony, and imperialism onto the universe, and they'll continue to run everything. But the universe ain't so thrilled about that. And now that's kind of coming to the forefront. So where are we now? So the plan was, we're going to take everything from Russia, but let's never forget, John Bolton wrote a book. And in that book, he made it clear that the neocons viewed Europe, after China, Europe, a huge market with 500 million people with money to spend, at least they used to have money to spend, as a threat. You see, the neocons view everything as a threat. Their enemies are a threat. It's kind of like, if you understand a sociopath and narcissist, right? A sociopath, when his kids are born, he views his kids as a threat. They're threatening him for his wife's attention. They're threatening him for money. The kids are a threat. The wife is a threat to him for whatever. His family members, everybody's a threat, because his only concern is feeding his sociopathic tendencies of getting a little joy from kicking people every now and then, smiling from the pain of others, filling his filthy pockets, getting whatever he wants. He has no friends. He has no comrades. He has only people out there who feed his narcissistic, sociopathic energy nonstop. There we have the neocons, and the European ruling elite thought that they could align with these people, and in the end, they wouldn't get hammered. Well, we'll get towards the end. Let's talk about what's happening and put this in a perspective. Rochdale, what happened in Rochdale? The European, the UK government, a government which, as a result of following the lead of the neocons in Washington, is, just like the neocons at Washington, at war with its people. The ruling elite in Europe have made the mistake not of being dragged into a war with Russia, but being dragged into a war with Europe. Think about this. The ruling elite has been dragged into a war with Europe. The ruling elite in Europe started off by bamboozling them and lying to them. They had no choice. If they told them the truth, do you think the European people would have said, oh, let me get this straight. You overthrew the government of Ukraine, installed Nazis, and now you want to use a Nazi government as a proxy government to take out Russia and steal all their stuff. You think some of the European people might have said, I ain't down with that. You're taking it too far. By the way, you're going to get us nuked. Nah, no thanks. They probably would have. So, and the ruling elite knew this. So they aligned with U.S. imperialism. They got together with the intelligence agencies. They got together with Google, Hoogle, Smoogle, all of them, Twitter, you name it. And they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to lie to these bastards. And then we're going to screw them, right? They lied to them. Gave them lots of lies, figuring, by the time this stuff shakes out, we'll have taken over Russia, and who cares, right? The problem is it didn't shake out. They didn't take over Russia. And now this is the key here to what I'm talking about. The ruling elite in the US and in Europe, talk about Europe right now, are at war. The ruling elite of Europe is at war with Europe. Because keep in mind, when I say Europe, whenever, I'm big as a Zen man, right? Here's what I understand. When I use a word, what do I mean? Right? We're used to freedom, liberty, blah, blah, blah. But the question is, what do you mean when you use those words? Those are just sounds. They don't mean anything. They give the world a context when they have meaning. So when I say Europe, what do I mean? Do I just mean the ground? Do I say kill everybody in Europe dies and then Europe is free? Why? Because there's no strife or struggle. Everybody's dead, right? Europe is great now because I just mean the ground, the mountains, the land. Do I mean the people? Do I mean the customs and traditions, the culture? which ain't doing so well either right now. If you really want the truth, and is that ain't exactly its strongest point ever, tell you the truth. But what do I mean? When a person like Garland, a lefty of my nature, says Europe, I'm talking about the working class. I'm talking about the masses. I'm talking about the people out here that are trying to feed their families. The people out here that are trying to survive, that want a decent job, that want a pension, that want to have a roof over their head. The people that want to go like they're accustomed to. They want to go to an outdoor cafe in Paris and have a drink and a friggin' baguette, I guess, a baguette or something. Or if it's in Germany, they want to sit out and have a brew, a beer, and some schnitzel, right? And talk about whatever they want to talk about. Those days are gone. So what happened? The ruling elite joined with U.S. imperialism, and they said, if the people of Europe are told the truth, they won't go along with our plan, so we'll just lie to them. And if anybody tries to circumvent our lies, we'll crush them like a flea. But the people, the number of people, the groups of people who started to circumvent the lies, who started to talk, who started to ask questions, my God, they asking questions. Those who started asking questions, the numbers grew and grew and grew. And as the economic pain grows, and as the fear of nuclear war goes, and as the knowledge of that they're being lied to grows, the number of people who are questioning the ruling elite and want a different path is also growing. So what does that mean? That means it's the ruling elite. They've got two options. They can go to the people and say, you've been had, took, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, misled, blah, blah, blah. And we did it, which is not a good option for them. Or they can double down and say, we got to censor these people anymore, even more so. We got to cut them down. We've got to attack the people. We've got to stop democracy. So Rochdale comes along, and George Galloway, a guy who they told us is dangerous. He's horrible. He's evil. He's frightening. For God's sake, this man must be stopped, right? So the ruling elite hated him. He was Brexit times 1,000. Whatever you do, don't vote for George Galloway. And the people in Rochdale demonstrated that they're not aligned with the ruling elite and that the lies aren't working anymore. The only thing the ruling elite has is some idiot blue and yellow flag waving impoverished morons who still think that the system is working in their best interest as everything crashes around their ankles, right? But either they'll learn or they'll suffer and learn, because they're going to learn. They're going to learn one way or the other. But either they will learn or they will learn. Either they will learn through knowledge or they will learn through pain, right? Because they've got the information, but there's a difference between information and knowledge. Information doesn't do you any good unless you got knowledge. Knowledge takes wisdom. You've got to take that information. You hear people, I go by the data. I go by the information, right? Information is of no value without wisdom. And then you have knowledge. You take information, you evaluate it, and now you know things, right? All right. So Rishi Sunak comes out and he gives a speech. And in his speech, he tells us how horrible things are going. And my God, this man, a madman, has won and something has to be done. But what he doesn't really address is the elephant in the room. And that is that George Galloway won because he got the most votes. That if Rishi Sunak and his ruling elite were to go to Rochdale and say, okay, guys, isn't it terrible what happened to Galloway, that he won, the people of Rochdale would say, you're damn right he won, because we wanted him in. We like his policies. We like his view of the world better than yours. This is not to say that George Galloway is good, bad, right, or wrong, or indifferent. This is to say that the people in Rochdale said, screw this, man. This ain't working for us. When it comes to Gaza, when it comes to everything, it ain't working for us. We are no longer aligned with the ruling elite. And so now the ruling elite got a big problem. It's one thing, here's here's the interesting thing about it. In the same way that the ruling elite of Europe worked to hide the reality that they had decided for open hot war with Russia, right? Russia, absolutely not. That's Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign, democratic, and independent country. Now, we just happen to be providing them with some of the things they need to fight. But hey, that's because we're supporting democracy and freedom and blah, blah, blah on Russia's border. Russia pounds the crap out of them. And at some point now, there's a leak recently, and the Germans pretty much openly admit, yeah, we're we're at hot war with Russia. The Americans are there, the French are there, everybody's there. The UK's there. They're sighting in missiles. They're shooting at Russia. They're attacking Russia. Isn't it great that we can put up this puppet state? We can pretend as though the puppet state is fighting Russia, but really we're the ones fighting Russia. So we're hiding it. We've been hiding it. Nobody knows. Or if everybody knows, they can't prove it, right? They can't prove that we're fighting Russia. So we have plausible deniability. Okay. Out comes this a bunch of Germans talking about the fact that they're at war with Russia. Hey, how do you want to attack Russia? Well, why don't we do it like the UK and the Americans do it? We'll hide behind the Ukrainians and we'll bomb and we'll attack and we'll sight in. Ooh, this is going to be fun. We're in a clandestine war with Russia and we're hiding it. And the Russians are like, or whomever it is that happened to intercept that says, here, world, listen to this. And now they can no longer hide that they're in a hot war with Russia, though they're trying. Because see, the reality is they don't have the wherewithal to fight Russia. So they got to stick Ukraine up there, stand behind Ukraine and throw a snowball every now and then. Right? In the same way, they're at war with Europe. They're at war with the working class, with the masses of Europe. And in the same way that they've been, that the masses of Europe, the ones that had any sense, already knew that the ruling elite was at war with them, but they couldn't come out and we know these bastards are at war with us, but they've got a little plausible deniability. What Rochdale has done is the same thing that the German leak has done. It has revealed the truth that the ruling elite is in a clandestine hot war with Russia and in a clandestine hot war with Europe. The ruling elite of Europe and the UN is in a clandestine, no longer clandestine hot war with Russia and with Europe. Because the people of Europe, they want a decent life. They got kids. They want a girlfriend. They want a drink. They want a friggin' schnitzel. Can't a guy eat a schnitzel in peace? No, he can't. Because the ruling elite has had enough of you enjoying your friggin' schnitzels. And it's time for you to starve. And the only thing you'll have to eat is your blue and yellow flag. But you'll have a blue and yellow flag. You can chew on it. Maybe some juice will come out. Blue and yellow juice. Don't do it. It's probably yellow dye number 5. And you're kind of going to be screwed. Right. One of the things that revealed to before Rochdale, I got to touch on this. Before Rochdale, one of the things that started to happen was the farmers situation started to wake up. Why is that? Understand the dynamics behind the farmer situation, because it's critical to understand this whole thing. The Ukraine project was also like wherever the hell Pinochet was, Bolivia, Argentina, who the hell cares? Whatever, right? It's where Chile, right? And it was to impose a neoliberal system on a country, which then allows you to rob, rape, and steal from the country, right? So it's okay, Zelensky, your job is to sell the productive agricultural land to big agro. And that's what he did. In comes, what's his name? Think with BlackRock. In comes all of the big agricultural companies. And Zelensky's like, fill my pockets, brother, fill my pockets, and I shall help you out. So needless to say, they pay off this freaking coke fiend. And what does he do? He sells them off, right? So big agro comes in. They get all this property. And they plant all kinds of unthinkable GMO products, which are cheap, and they're going to flood the market. They're going to take everybody out, right? So these things, they grow in like an hour. It's like, hey, plant some corn. It's GMO. They plant the corn. They turn around. They look back. Holy crap, there's a field of corn. How'd that happen? Yeah, this particular corn only takes 5 minutes to full production. But don't get too close to it because it bites. Right. You got to stay a distance from this corn because, well, to be quite frank, we crossed it with an alligator. And, sometimes every now and then we lose a worker in the field. But, you can't have all meat and no gravy, I always say. Right. Bottom line is this, as they say, frankenfood. Right. So they as Mick says, frankenfood. So they grow this stuff that grows in 5 minutes that costs like 1 cent per ton of seed because they created themselves in a lab. And one day, the European farmers wake up and there's trains of frankenfood coming in. Remember, the European farmers have to save the planet. They have to do all kinds of stuff. You know, they're no longer allowed to use gas. They got to use like horses or something like that, right? They got to walk with like hand tools that were used in the medieval times to like use a little hoe for their garden because, you know, heaven forbid they should use a tractor and spurt something into for God's sake, into the atmosphere and kill us all, right? So bottom line is there's so many rules and regulations. Not that I'm opposed to rules and regulations. This isn't about it. Not that I'm for rules and regulations. This isn't about it. Here's the reality. You can approve them or disapprove of them. Here's the bottom line. It's not a level playing field. The farmers in the EU have to do all these very expensive things, which drives up the price of the stuff they're selling, which is fine. They can make a living as long as we've got a level playing field, and that's all that everybody can buy. So it's like, okay, you drive the prices up. It screws the people. They got to pay more, but it is what it is. The farmers can, the people can eat from the farms. The farmers can eat because they can make enough money to feed their families, right? Some of them are big farmers, sure, but it's the same principle. Well, that ain't the case for BlackRock and Big Agro. They grow this crap cheap and they send it into Europe and the prices start to plunge and the farmers are going to go out of business. Now, one might say, well, that's terrible. We'll all starve. No, we won't. You see, my friend, once the farmer goes out of business and loses his farm, I wonder who's going to come in and buy it cheap. You know, I mean, the farmers all across Europe suddenly go bankrupt because of all of this frankenfood coming in from Ukraine and the value of their land. I mean, they need to pay off and get out of them from, you know, a few dollars will help them out. What do you know? In comes Big Agro and BlackRock. And they say, you know, farmers in France, Germany, and everyone else, Denmark, we'd like to help you out. So here's what we're going to do. We will buy your land out from under you. And the farmers, being in a desperate situation, unable to keep up with the plunging prices of frankenfood, have no choice. They sell out. BlackRock buys, BlackRock plants, and the prices go back up to twice what they were before. Once they get the land, you know what I mean? It's the oldest game in the book. You come in, you go low prices, you put your competitors out of business, you buy your competitors, you jack the prices back up. Amazon used to be the cheapest thing out there. Amazon didn't make money for like 10 or 15 years. It was the cheapest thing out there. They sold books cheap. People used to go to Amazon because they got good prices. I got to tell you what, right now, go look at Amazon and go look in the store at the same thing. It's either the same or it costs more. They don't do that anymore because they don't have to. They ran their competitors out of business. So BlackRock et al., they go to Ukraine, plant frankenfood, drive farmers out of business. They buy it now. Next coming, they buy the farmers' land all over Europe. They replant it with frankenfood. Then they own the EU. They get rid of all of the rules and regulations that cost the farmers their jobs. Boom, they're all gone. Now they put they put in the alligator corn or whatever, corn crossed with piranha or something, right? It grows quickly, and then they jack the price up. So they make cheaper stuff that's unhealthy, that'll give you cancer with like one bite. And then they jack the prices back up to double what they were before. The farmers figured out the game. They figured out the game. And they said, oh, crap on that. We're going to go and we're going to raise hell until we get what we want. So the farmers are in the streets. That was the beginning of the European war between the people and the ruling elite, is the farmers. You will mark that on your calendar. That's the beginning of the war against the ruling elite. Now what we're seeing is, so that was a physical, that was a kinetic, that was workers, good old fashioned workers. And you know, an old lefty like Garland Nixon don't love nothing better than to see the workers coming together to raise hell against the ruling elite and the corporations. Oh my gosh, I'm just sitting back, sipping on a martini, grinning, right? The old lefties like me, not the new fake lefties that are standing around trying to figure out how many genders there are. The real lefties, the old lefties, the one that was about unions and standing up against the man, right? Okay, that's where we are. We're just a grinning. So we continue, we go forward. So that was the beginning of the war in Europe. There is a war in Europe. There's definitely a war in Europe going on. And the war in Europe is between the ruling elite and the masses. So what happens? Rochdale is the beginning. You know, I remember at the very beginning of the special military operation, you know, I read Vladimir Putin's, I read his speeches, and in one of the speeches, he talked about the ruling elite in EU, and he said, I'll never forget this. He said that he suspects, and I'm paraphrasing, that at some point there will be a new group, there will be a new ruling elite in Europe, and that's a fact. And it's possible that the old ones may face an untimely demise. It's possible. You know me, I oppose violence, but you keep pushing people too far, and you will get violence, particularly the mass of workers. You destroy their way of life. You destroy their way to make a living and feed their families, and they ain't going to take kindly to it. At some point, it could go really, really ugly in Europe. So Rochdale happens, and we see the truth that the European ruling elite are a bunch of sociopathic, genocidal, murdering, thieving bastards, corrupt as the day is long. And the people are like, look, we ain't down with that. We're sticking in Galloway. So in comes Galloway. That's the beginning. Now Galloway's saying, look, you see what I did to these schmucks? I got more votes than all of my competitors combined. What do you think? My party, I think, what is it, the Workers' Party, Socialist Party, whatever it is, my party is going to put people up all over Europe. And the ruling elite are like, holy crap, they'll win. Oh, geez. My God, what are we going to do? So Rishi Sunak starts, like anyone, we've got to do something. This is a threat. Democracy is a threat to democracy. These crazy people, they're going to vote in the wrong people, and then we'll get our heads cut off. Yeah, you got a good point there. But at any rate, so Sunak starts off, we need more censorship. We need more, we need to stand, we need to, get with the media. Sunak's probably calling the media, BBC, Reuters, get over there right now. It's open seasons on Galloway. It's Galloway season. Load your barrels of propaganda. Fire away. Fire when ready, right? So they bring out the howitzers now. They come into Galloway. Galloway, what about the Muslim-y stuff, anti-Semitism, and lies and things like that? Yeah, Galloway stomps them in. Get the hell out of here, you morons. I got voted, right? He stomps them into the ground so bad and so quite easily that it goes viral. That he stomped, Sky News and BBC, whatever, stomps them into the ground. They come in with, these people are so lost. These people are so clueless. They come in and like, well, don't you just respect Rishi Sunak? What kind of question is that? What kind of Rishi Sunak? Well, who next? And don't you respect Olaf Scholz and Rishi Sunak? They're two peas in a pod, which they are, right? Their mothers don't respect them if they're alive. Their wives don't respect them. Their children doesn't respect them. What would make you think the voters would respect them? The neocons in DC don't respect them. Nobody. Joe, there was Joe Biden came. I'll never forget it. Joe Biden comes to the UK, and there's, as he called him, Rashid Sunak, right? Comes in, there's old Rashid Sunak. He's grinning. You know how your dog does when you come home? If you got a dog and you've been gone, all day, or maybe you've gone for a couple of days and you left your dog with the neighbor and you come home, the little mutt kind of dog that's mixed with everything, but they're the best dogs in the world, right? And you come home and the dog sees you and his whole body wiggles. He doesn't just wiggle his tail. He's like a friggin' snake. You know what I mean? The dog, he's so happy. He's wiggling all over the place, right? That was pretty much Rashid Sunak. When Biden comes there, Biden's like, hey, schnook. And he's, it's Joe. Oh, God, Joe Biden, right? And there's like some guy standing by, some old pasty looking guy standing there next to him. Biden looks at old Sunak and just looks away and shakes the other guy's hands as if to say, get away from me, little brown guy. Your job is to hold the seat for a while, to get the hell pounded out of you, and then we can blame everything on you and shove you aside. Shut up and do your job. And old Rashid Sunak grinned like a little dog that just got kicked and wallowed away, slobbering on the floor, sniffing Joe Biden's butt, no doubt. So he's done. And now he gives a speech clearly written by a clueless ruling elite in which he says, screw the people. The democracy in this country must be stopped by all means necessary, right? And if we look around Europe, that's what's coming. It's coming all over Europe. You're going to see the war between the ruling elite and the people of Europe really grow and get more and more powerful as the people of Europe begin to wake up. You know, you can't do anything when you're asleep. Once you're awake, you can accomplish a lot of things. And luckily for the people of Europe, they are slowly starting to wake up. Unluckily for them, it's a little late because they're not getting their industry back. The United States has stolen their industry. The United States has grabbed them. I suspect has grabbed their energy means of transport. So now they can't get cheap Russian energy. They're going to have to get it from the U.S. And one of the things I suspect is going to happen is the U.S. said you can't get energy from Russia because Russia will use that as a weapon. Because the neocons would never do that, would they? Yes, they would, and yes, they will. So they now have full grasp on, not full, but almost full grasp on the energy mechanisms, the energy, all of the means of acquiring energy for Europe. They've got a full grasp on that. And when the people of Europe start to freak out and say, we don't like what's going on, they're going to use that to tighten the screws. They'll use that to tighten the screws. And let's face it, they hate the Europeans anyway. So they'd be happy to impoverish them and turn Europe into a broken hellhole. That's the plans for Europe. And those plans are going to be successful. If you're in Europe, you're going to get it. There ain't no way out of that. You're going to get it. And I think, here's my guess. Now, I may be wrong. There's people that may disagree. Here's what I think happens in Europe. I think that initially there will be a swing to the right, the AFD, etc. Europe will swing to them because they're going to say, you've been screwed, which they have. They're going to say, this business about hating Russia is not helping us, which it isn't. And then they're going to say, we've got the answers, which they don't. And their answers are going to be very simplistic answers. The answers are going to be, what we need to do is further deregulation, which will only empower the corporations more. What we need to do is we need to cut social benefits, which will only impoverish the working class more. And we need to blame it on the immigrants and throw them out. But what we're not going to do is stop meddling in the countries where these immigrants came from that's creating instability, that's causing them to leave their damn countries. So they're going to come in and they're going to have some answers. And we want to turn down the volume on this crap with Russia. But of course, their foundational policies of deregulating every damn thing, which the neoliberals absolutely love. And their austerity politics, which is let's cut down on anything that would help the poor and even the middle class, which the neoliberals absolutely love, will basically cement some of the foundation of neoliberalism. The neoliberals won't be all that pissed when it comes to the economic policy of the conservative right wing in Europe. They will be pissed about foreign policy. They will be pissed that some of them are nationalists and will tend to say we want independence and sovereignty, but they won't be pissed about the austerity. Okay. The people of Europe, I predict, will be pissed about the austerity. So I suspect a swing to the right first. But when they feel the pain of austerity and when they see the corporations growing even more powerful from deregulation, a swing back somewhat to the left. How far to the left they swing, I don't know. But I suspect what we're going to see is some wild ideological swings to the right. Yay, the AFD will fix it all. And the immigrants, they'll stop them and their life will be good. That ain't going to work. You're going to lose your friggin' pensions and stuff like that. And then the corporations are going to run rampant because of deregulation. And they're going to, hey, whoa, whoa. And then they're going to swing back to the left. So I see some wild ideological swings coming. We shall see. But that's what I suspect. But the bottom line is, I've said this for a while. When it comes to ruling elite, I don't know in what countries. There's going to be some violence. There's going to be some people waking up one day, going to, whether it's their parliament buildings, their government buildings, maybe Brussels, I don't know, but there's going to be some people, crowds of many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, surrounding them saying, we can't take, not we don't like it, we can't take the pain anymore of this. Because keep in mind something, the only thing NATO, there is no really Europe. NATO is an umbrella organization of US to take full control of Europe's foreign policy. And of course, the EU is just an umbrella organization for the US to take full control of Europe's economic and cultural policies. That's the way they run everything. That's it, right? There are people in the EU who are saying we need a European army. Why are they saying that? Because they see the decline of the U.S. empire, and they still want to be empires. They still want to be colonial empires. So they still think, well, we need our own military for power projection, right? The U.S. does not want you to have a military. And that's one of the reasons they impoverished you. You are impoverished, so you can't afford a military. Germany, France, all these countries are going to talk about all the things that we need to do, but internally they're collapsing from economic pain. So they'll talk a big talk about militaries and all of that, but they ain't got the money to do nothing. They're going to be internally collapsing, just like a balloon from the outside, suck it in, getting smaller and smaller, like somebody sucking the air out of them as Russia continues to grow economically. Look at it collapse. And of course, I think some level of economic collapse is coming for US. I think right now, one of the warning signs is Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going through the roof. And I think one of the reasons that Bitcoin's going through the roof is a lot of rich and powerful people know something bad is coming, and that their money is they're looking to park their place in a place that's not going to be hit by the policies of any particular government, right? Bitcoin is outside of the government sphere, okay? And so I think that there are a lot of people now and a lot of financial institutions that are just going to park their money in Bitcoin, and they're watching it go up, and they're going to park it more and more and more, and it's going to go up, 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 up. And God forbid we have some kind of severe economic crash, Bitcoin's going to be a million. You know what I mean? It'll be nuts. It'll go insane. And that can and may very well happen. I think at some point it will happen when the U.S. crashes, when the U.S. crash comes. Let's talk about the battlefield a little bit, because Rochdale is what it is. I mean, anybody can see that coming. Some people in Europe got a chance to vote for somebody who believed in the things that who was pushing back against the ruling elite, and they jumped all over it. But let's talk about AVDEEVKA. What is that? You know, AVDEEVKA is not just a town that fell. It is a symbol of the entire Ukraine project. Why? Because what happened is the U.S. empire, when it first went into Ukraine, it started building these in 2014 when they overthrew the government, and they started building these fortresses. And AVDEEVKA was one of the fortresses, right? A fortress that could not, an impregnable fortress, cement and rebar and all this stuff, right? So bottom line is they build this thing. The Russians will never be able to get in here, and we'll be able to fight. And the Ukrainians were happy, because that gave them a way to attack Russian civilians. Anytime they really felt bad, oh man, things aren't going bad, what do you do? I know it'll make me feel better. Let's kill some Russian civilians. Yeah, great. Boom, they fire some rounds, they kill some Russian civilians, they high five, and they can celebrate. And the Russians, being the patient fighters they are, just slowly creeped up on AVDEEVKA. Slowly creeped up, pounded AVDEEVKA until it weakened, until they got it just about surrounded, and then they just smeared it. And so now they've taken AVDEEVKA, and this fortress that could not possibly be defeated was defeated. And there goes the Ukraine project. It was a fortress that was set up next door to Russia. That was an impregnable fortress that all over the place, there was Ukrainian troops, there was Ukrainian hardware, you name it. And of course, the intelligence of NATO and all the things they could do with NATO was behind it, the training, and all these things were added, and they kept giving them more stuff, and it could never fall. It was an impregnable fortress, and it's cracked. That thing's cracked. And everybody who's paying attention knows that it's going down. And now what you have is you have a ruling elite in Europe that's desperate for two reasons. Number one, they're desperate because they know that the war in Ukraine is lost. That it's lost. It was just a matter of time, but they know it's lost. They know that there's no hope. They know what's going on the front lines, that the Ukrainians are running for their damn lives, which is what all the smart ones are anyway. Try to get the hell out of Dodge. They see that Ukraine's literally snatching people off the friggin' streets, out of bars and trolleys to throw them to the front lines to be torn to shreds. And the Ukrainians aren't all that thrilled about that. They see the instability where there could be a coup in any given moment in Kiev. They're looking at their Ukraine project collapse right in front of their eyes. And they're like, we can't let that happen, because then we'll be exposed. The whole thing was built on lies. We'll be exposed that we said the Russians are weak. They're fighting with shovels. They're out of missiles. Blah, they can't possibly win. Yikes. They lost 25 planes shot down by the Ukrainians in the last week. The Russians fired 50 missiles and the Ukrainians shot down 51. You know, I mean, that stuff all looks good on the mainstream media, but the Russians don't read the mainstream media. They just keep on coming. They keep on firing artillery. They keep on creeping on up to the edges. They keep on dropping bombs. They just keep coming, and they're not going to stop. And bit by bit, they're going to take what they're going to take. And now the lie that the Russian army was weak and could easily be defeated, but at the same time was so powerful that it was going to attack NATO at any minute, those lies have converged. And now the whole lie that they were going to lose, oh, things ain't looking good. But they're going to attack NATO. But we should let Ukraine in. And I think of the other contradiction. Three of them go together. One, the Russians are weak and can't possibly defeat Ukraine. Two, the Russians are extremely powerful. And after they defeat Ukraine, they're going to attack the entire NATO. What are we going to do? How will we possibly stop them? They'll immediately attack all the NATO countries. There's nothing they love better than attacking NATO countries. They're attacking NATO countries. That's what's coming. Attack NATO countries. The Russians are going to do that. But we need to put Ukraine into NATO, because if Ukraine is in NATO, then the Russians will be deterred from attacking them, because the Russians would never attack a NATO country. The Russians are about to attack a NATO country, but we had to get Sweden and Finland into NATO so they could be defended, because the Russians won't attack a NATO country. And we need to get Ukraine into NATO because the Russians are petrified, horrified of NATO, and they'd never attack a NATO country. But as second Ukraine falls, which it won't because the Russians are too weak to defeat them, the minute it falls, the Russians are going to attack NATO. They got too many lies. They can't keep up with them. Too many contradictions. They can't keep up with them. And those contradictions now are meeting at the, they're all meeting together like a girl's meeting in the bathroom, right? All the contradictions are coming together and people are scratching their heads saying, hey, what? Oh, wait. And the people of Europe are like, look, I think we know how a war with Russia ends. We get nuked. We ain't down for that, right? Meanwhile, I think you've got a combination of things in this train wreck, in this debacle, in that I've always said this when people say NATO and Europe, is NATO going to attack Russians? I said if they would if they could, but they can't, so they won't. There's I'm reading some articles the other day. One of the, I forgot which country it was, but basically the bottom line, let me find it. There was somebody. I'm gonna read this. This is important. Here we go. This is an important article in the context of this discussion. Let's go there. All right. Europe would be out of ammo and throwing stones within hours of a major conflict, general warns. European countries have sent tens of billions of euros worth of sophisticated military hardware to Ukraine over the past few years to fuel the blah, 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 emptying their armories, right? So this guy, Mark Thies, T-H-Y, retired lieutenant general, former vice chief defense of Belgium's armed forces, inventories are extremely low, especially when it comes to high quality ammunition, Thies said in an interview with Germany's Bayerischer Rundfunk broadcaster. If you order for today, for some types of ammunition, it will take up to 7 years to receive your order. And clearly the Russians will stand by on the front for 7 years till you get your ammo. They certainly wouldn't advance against you. Even with the simplest NATO standard 5.56 millimeter ammunition, if we sign a contract today, it will take 12 months to get, right? You can be sure that our opponents, whether in Moscow or in Beijing or anywhere else in the world, you have to explain to me why Beijing's going to attack frickin' Belgium. Again, the madness of these people. Know about the ammunition shortage. Well, if they didn't, they do now, Mr. Big Mouth, the former commander added, without specifying how Russia or China would launch aggression against Belgium or what might motivate them to do so, right? Our armies are designed for expeditionary operation. In other words, to go out and blow up a bunch of olive frickin' farmers in the Middle East. These are small contingents with few logistics and very little, if any, ammunition consumption. Suddenly, we have found ourselves in time of open war again. Found yourself. I love it. We found ourselves. You know what that is? That's like me walking up behind Mike Tyson and punching him in the back of the head. He turns around, starts swinging it on me, and I say, you know, I found myself in a fight with Mike Tyson. How'd that happen? Perhaps if I hadn't bopped him in the back of the noggin, I wouldn't be beaten to a pulp right now. I know Germany had 5,000 tanks in the late 80s. Today, Germany has between 200 and 300 tanks. I'm not saying the Bundeswehr has to go back to 5,000, but this gap is enormous. Oh, yeah, well, let me tell you something, Mr. Genius. There was a time when Garland Nixon could bench 365 pounds. Back when I was a police officer working out every day, pumping iron, eating friggin' egg whites and chewing on nails, right? Okay. I'd be lucky if I could bench 3.65 pounds right now, for God's sake. No, I mean, I don't even try heavyweight anymore. I'm an older guy. I don't. So the idea that they had 5,000 tanks back in the 1980s, what are you going to do? Get in a war with Russia and get a time machine? Hey, Russians, would you please hop in this time machine and go back and fight us in the 1980s? Sorry, pal. No luck. What's done is done. You're now. So they go on. He says, if you want to change Europe politically, the knife has to be at your throat and the blood has to start dripping. Then things will start to change. Well, here they got a bigger problem. Here's the problem. Number one, they're out of ammo. Number two, they don't have the money to build up their military. Number three, they're lying that Russia is threatening to attack them. So they don't have a need for the military. Now, this is a thought. Here's another thought. Mike Tyson turns around and says, Garland, you hit me in the head. I think I'm going to punch you. Here's an option. Could we talk, Mike? All right, let me tell you, man, it was an accident. Sorry about that. I hit you. I probably wasn't thinking. It was an error. You know, I've seen the error of my ways. Perhaps we could shake hands. I'll agree. Here's what we'll do. I'll pay you. Here's $100 for your trouble. Go buy yourself a nice dinner. I'll go in the other direction. We'll move on. I'll agree not to hit you anymore, and you agree not to beat me to a pulp. And Mike Tyson says, make it 150. Here's 150. Shake hands. Mike Tyson walks away. He gets a nice dinner. I go home. I'm not beaten to a pulp by Mike Tyson. Everybody's happy. That's called negotiations. It's called diplomacy. So for some reason, the Europeans haven't thought of one option, and that is we can't get shells right now. We can't get ammunition. We don't have the industrial capacity to build the ammunition. We can't fight the Russians. If we fought the Russians, they'd kill us in an hour. We'd be throwing stones at them. Probably wouldn't work against hypersonic missiles. But the one thing that never dawned on their little pumpkin heads is perhaps we should call the Russians up. The Russians have been saying, let's come up with a security agreement where nobody has to fight. Now, they got weapons. They can fight. And they want a security agreement. You don't have weapons and you can't fight. And you can't accept the security agreement because your masters in Washington, D.C. want to use you as cannon fodder. And you got a bigger problem, European ruling elite. You're at war with your own people because they don't want to fight anymore. You know what they want? A job. You know what they want? Their pensions. You know what they want? A life. They remember the old days when they got a good education. They got a good job. They turned 22. They went to a nightclub. They met a hot babe. They ended up getting married and having 3.5 kids in a minivan. Back when things were normal. Then their wife chewed on their ear and she wouldn't let them go fishing. And they got mad because they couldn't go fishing. But eventually she let them go fishing, right? I say all that to say this. It's important to fish. No, that's not it. I say all that to say this. The war to really start to look at, to me, is between the European ruling elite and the people. And how did the European ruling elite manage the position they are when they've got their masters in Washington saying, you will do this, that, and the other, and the people in Europe at some point saying, and if you do, we'll kill you. you're going to be out of power. How do they manage claiming that there's a democracy when if they allow the people to practice democracy? Number one, they're going to be out of power, but there's a much worse fate that awaits them, and that is that all the lies will be exposed. What happens right here if a government comes in here and the new government says, I'm going to bring in some unbiased people and investigate and figure out what the hell happened with this Nord Stream thing? Oh, what happens then? What happens if the Germans, the AFD comes in and they says, yeah, it's Nord Stream thing don't look pretty, does it? Yeah, we're going to do a real investigation. You know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to call the UN. UN, send in your investigators. And we're going to have some investigators, some people that hate Olaf Scholz and Baerbock and the rest of these people, and say, look, we'll do a real investigation because we already know what they're going to find. What happens if these governments start to fall and people start turning over rocks and saying, let's look at what happened? What happens? And here's the bad one. If the Zelensky government falls, if the Russians come in and a bunch of the cheats and swindlers in Ukraine say, you know, Russians, we did you dirty. We lied, we cheated, and we stole, and now you're in power. And we did bad things. And we worked with the U.S. to try to really screw you, but you're in power now, and we know the game. You know the game, we know the game. We're here to bargain. We got the dirt. What do you want on Joe Biden? We got it. What do you want on Newland? What do you want on the UK and Rashid Sunak and the rest of these schmucks? What do you want? Oh, you want information on the illegal things that they were doing, the CIA was doing? We got it. You want information on what was happening with these bio research labs? Man, we got it. What happens if the Russians come to power in Ukraine, which is coming, and in Ukraine, a bunch of these crooked swindlers that does what crooked swindlers do? You know what they're going to do. What would you do if you were a crooked swindler? You're sitting there. You don't have any love for Ukraine or the U.S. or Russia or none of them. You're looking out for numero uno. The Russians come to town. You're sitting back in your office, and they come to town and they say, "Hey, Mr. Swindler, Ukrainian Nixon, yeah, we're here for you." And I say, "Okay, well, I understand that, but I got some bargaining chips." And the Russians, they're smart. Lay them on the line. I got dirt on this person, information on that, blah, blah, blah. We got computer files. We got recorded conversations. We got everything you need. Tell you what we do. You don't prosecute me for anything. You turn your back on all this illicit cash that I've gotten. You allow me to keep on operating in this town, doing what I do. And I'll hand this stuff over to you. We can shake hands and everybody walk away. And one of the things the Russians, what are you going to do if you're the Russians? I know what I'm going to do. Show me the money, brother. Show me the money. Start off. I've done it when I was in law enforcement. When some crooked guy comes, when I was in, and says, look, I'm crooked. I'm crooked as a rattlesnake. I'm crooked as a barrel of fish hooks, but I got some dirt. You let me walk or you back off me, whatever, and I'll give you all the dirt you need for these bigger cases. Let me show me the money, brother. All right, here you go. That looks good. Let me make sure it's right. I look into it. I come back. What you gave me is good. We're good. You know, one of the things, my buddy was a Baltimore City officer in a poor area. He was in South Baltimore back then. That was the poor white area of Baltimore, right in South Baltimore. And do not be mistaken, they got the hell beat out of them by cops and everything else the same as the poor black, but it was different. It was different. Bottom line is this: one of the things, and this is real talk. My buddy Mike, I haven't seen him in years, but he was a partner of mine for years. And what he said was, he said, you don't screw in Baltimore City, the area that he was in, there was a lot of hookers, right, that walked the street, right? Unfortunate, sad state of affairs. A lot of times they were heroin addicts, etc. He said, but here's the bottom line. The cops didn't mess with them. They didn't give them a hard time. You've seen the hookers walking down the street. You're walking in to get a soda. The hookers walk in. How you doing, officer? And I'm doing fine. How's things going? Great, right? You left the hookers alone. Why? Why? Because there was a shooting. You leave the hookers alone, and one of them's like, hey, Officer Mike, yeah. That shooting the other day, yeah. Well, you know what that was about, don't you? No, what was it about? Well, old Billy so-and-so over there was involved in this and that, and so-and-so did this and took this and didn't bring him that, and so him and his boys came back and they shot the guy. Thanks. But you didn't hear it from me. Hear it from who? I've never seen you before in my life. See, they didn't go after the hookers because the hookers were, as what's his name, Hulk Hogan used to say, a fountain of misinformation, right? They didn't go after the hookers because the hookers hooked them up. The hookers gave them info. The hookers, you know, this guy over here is doing a little such and such. Okay. Hey, man, this guy beat up so-and-so. All right, I'll look into it. This guy's threatened a bunch of the girls on the street. He says he's going to kill them if they don't give him 20%, but he's involved in this and that. Could you lock him up, officers? We got him covered. We'll make sure he doesn't touch you. Right? All kinds of things like that. That's the way the game's played. So when the Russians show up in Kiev, which they will, when the Russians show up in the heart of Ukraine, which they will, there will be people who are effectively like the hookers. There will be people who show up and say, look, I'm dirty. You know I'm dirty. I know you're dirty. We know the game, man. But I got bargaining chips. And just like the cops did, they'd say, we leave you alone if you give us, if what you got is of value. That's coming. And the U.S. empire. See, people think they're afraid of losing to the Russians, of a loss. Sure, yeah. They're afraid of being humiliated. Sure, yeah, right. Okay. Their biggest fear is being outed, because you would shiver in your boots if you knew how much dirt was going on. What do you think? Look, Sam Bankman-Fried, right? Think about this. The U.S. is sending tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine to support the war effort. And Ukraine's invested in crypto? What sense does that make? It's almost like there's a scam going on here. Almost like there's some money laundering. Some of it's showing back up in Washington in the hands of the Democratic Party. Probably some of the Republicans do, no doubt. No doubt the CIA and intelligence was involved in laundering money. Some of these weapons are showing up in the hands of terrorists in Africa. You think maybe the CIA might have been involved with trafficking weapons around the world? They can't afford. Oh, by the way, since 2014, there's been so much dirt run through, so much crap, so much illegality and criminality that was filtered through Ukraine, that if Ukraine falls and the people in Ukraine start singing, whoo, man, that is it for the U.S. empire. And that's where they are. By the way, how do you think the Taiwan's going to take this? How do you think Taiwan's going to look over there and realize the truth, that their fate is the same fate as Ukraine? Ain't good. So in Europe, as Ukraine, AVDEEVKA signals the crash of the Ukrainian project, right? And they have to worry about the people in Ukraine ratting them out, right? About the truth coming out, about this whole thing shattering and falling apart. George Galloway wins. And now they got to worry about the people in Europe, about a change of government, about a change of rulers in Europe. And what happens now if you got a new government in the UK that says, we want to look at some of the dirt that would happen between the Rashid Sunak and Bojo and the neocons? What happens if it happens in France and whoever the hell is in charge says, I kind of want to take a look and see what happened between Macron government and the neocons? What happens if it happens in Germany and the people in the new government says, let's take a peep and do a little investigation, figure out what happened with Nord Stream, Norway, wherever, right? So in the event that there's a change of rulership in Ukraine, people can start looking for the dirt, and there's a lot of it. In France, in Germany, in the UK. See, the problem they got is not the Russians. The problem they got is the skeletons in their closet. And that crap's coming out. And there's no way it can't. It happened. They should have thought of that when they were doing it, but they couldn't. And might I add, I'll end by saying this. Gaza. If the Ukrainian project didn't demonstrate that the ruling elite is not at all aligned with the masses, Gaza clearly demonstrated that, because the masses have some level. I mean, you got a lot of people of the masses who are, down with pretty terrible stuff and who are like, oh yeah, those are brown people or whatever, Muslims, kill them all, right? You got some of the masses that are there. But as a whole, I think the masses have some level of conscience. And I think as a whole, the masses, are not down with genocide. And so now the masses get to see these monsters for who they really are. They're like, holy crap, whoa, these people are worse than we thought. And so they're being exposed to the masses. And they're such sociopaths, they don't even realize it. They're like, hey, we're going to go ahead and genocide a bunch of Muslims and Christians and whatever, the Palestinians. And the masses are like, hey, this ain't right. And the ruling elite are they're such sociopaths. They're like, we don't understand. What do you mean? Well, we genocided the Libyans. We genocided the Syrians, 600,000 dead, 1 million Iraqis. You seem to have forgotten maybe Laos, Cambodia, the Jakarta method. Huh? How about that? Read that book, The Jakarta Method. How about you think about Vietnam, 3 million people? Come on, what are you talking about? We've been doing genocide since the word was invented. So we don't understand. What are you so upset about? What was right in front of their face? And they can see it and they don't like it. And so now the people are even more estranged from the ruling elite saying, look, it's bad enough that this Russian thing ain't working out for us, but you've been exposed as freaking genocidal freaks, and we ain't down with that. Which means what? Which means that the ruling elite is even at more war with their people. And so now their people are screaming, saying, stop genociding the Palestinians. And the ruling elite's like, no, not going to do it. Not only are we not going to do it, we ain't even thinking about it. Forget it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to censor you so you can't talk about it. If you protest against it, we'll arrest you. They're going to just go on. And so what we got now in this gigantic train wreck is a war. Is bottom line, the ruling elite, the neocons in DC, and their lackeys in Europe, ruling elite in Europe, are extremely isolated. They are the most isolated people in history in a long time, since the Nazis in World War II, which weren't so isolated because they got a lot of support from the US and the UK and afterwards. But here's my point. They're isolated in that the global South, as they call it, Asia, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, are like, screw you guys, man. You're some bad genocidal dudes. We're not down with you anymore. So they're isolated from the global South, as it were. They're isolated from the BRICS, Russia, India, mostly India, but Russia, mostly India's, will still work on that one, talk about that. But Russia, China, Brazil, etc. So the ruling elite are isolated from the BRICS nations. They're isolated from the global South. Here's the big one. They're isolated from their own working class and the masses. They're isolated from everyone. The ruling elite, the neocons, have dragged the ruling elite in Europe into a war with Russia, a war with BRICS and China, a war with the global South, and a war with their own people. I may be wrong, but I'm suspecting that's a war they can't win. That's what I'm suspecting. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, I got to get ready to run, but so I can't really do the super chats right now. But do me a favor, share this on all your social media platforms. Somebody says, I know where Garland has a tie today. He had lunch with Vicky. Oh, Victoria Newland. Oh, yeah, I'm sure she'd just love to have lunch with me. Yeah, that'd be my last meal. It'd probably have like broken glass, Novichok, and everything else in it. But at any rate, thanks a lot. No, actually, I'm getting ready to do an interview with Al Jazeera here in about 5 minutes. But at any rate, make sure you put this on, save this on all your social media platforms everywhere. Make sure you share it with everybody. Once again, I'm on Rumble now. So if they toss me off of YouTube, then I'm on Rumble, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Don't forget the important thing about Rockfin. Everybody, it doesn't cost anything to join. I do every now and then, about once a week or so, I will do a Rockfin show that is for members only, for subscribers only. It's free to become a member. Rockfin doesn't have advertisements, so if you can become a subscriber, it's actually $14.99 a month on Rockfin. I'd appreciate anybody that can become a subscriber. Do it. You don't have to, but if you can, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. Make sure you follow me on Rumble and follow me on Rockfin, whether you become a subscriber or not. Also, share this everywhere. Follow me on Telegram. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram. And last but not least, if you can, patreon.com, or maybe buy me a coffee, or maybe what is it, PayPal, or perhaps Cash App. Any way you can help the channel is supported. That's it. That's all. Thanks. As I said, I got to do a Al Jazeera. I think I'm talking about Galloway. Interesting. That ought to be fun. Thanks a lot, everybody. I always have a blast with you guys. Peace. I'm out.